So our next speaker is Chris Metherell, and this talk is very much for the beginner botanist. Chris does a lot of work at the local level, but also you may have seen some of his wife Hazel's little articles in BSBI News. So he's very well placed to help beginner botanists get that little foothold that they need towards recording. So Chris, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. Nice to see so many participants for this meeting, I have to say. Almost 60 I can see on my count. Yes, we thought that one of the frequent questions we're asked when we're training botanists of all sorts is that people don't, how can they get to the resources they need? Some resources are really good, of course, particularly on the web, and some are really not quite so good. So we thought it would be a good idea this afternoon just to run through some of the resource areas which are available. And hopefully, even if you're an experienced botanist, maybe just one, perhaps, or two that you haven't thought of using, it might be worth a try. So I'm going to share my screen, I hope. Yes. There we go. And you should now have a screen that says starting out in botany, a guide to resources.
Yep, that's good, Chris. Okay,
thank you. And of course, the first place that you should look, because you're all BSBI members, is the BSBI website. And it would take me, I think, probably all afternoon to run through all the materials which are available on the website. It is an enormous resource for botany in the UK. Incidentally, all the screens will have the web address at the top because these are on the whole web resources, although of course some of them you will find useful to use perhaps on your mobile phone in the field. So I'll put the web address up. And of course, this is being recorded and will go out on YouTube in due course. So you'll be able to access the resources by looking at the web addresses. I find that the best way to access resource materials on the BSBI website is to scroll to the bottom of the splash page and look at the A to Z listing. Because this is only about 2/3 of it, what I've got on the screen. And it gives you some idea of the sorts of things that are available. It's a huge list, and it's really worth exploring. To just sit for half an hour and prod some of the links, and you'll find all sorts of things which are really very informative and very interesting. For example, I'm sure you can see from that list that many counties, probably almost all vice counties, now have their own web page, which is maintained as part of the BSBI site. Here's an example. This is Anglesey, very active Flora group. They publish annual reports, and there are listings of their meetings, where they're going. You can see there's an article there about Welsh botanology, which was a very, very early UK botanical book, and in fact believed to be the first one in Wales. Other sites have different sets of information. This is a particularly good one, I think. This is the Kent site, again accessed through the BSBI pages, and they've actually gone to the extent of putting up not only their newsletters, but their little sort of local journal and so forth. And once again, there are all sorts of information about activities in their vice county, in vice counties 15 and 16. So a very good first step would be to discover which vice county you're in, if you didn't know. Go onto the BSBI website and have a look and see what resources there are for botanists in your area. Always a good place to start locally. And you will find, I am sure, that there are a large number of resources. They will tend to be a bit different from area to area, but all very valuable. And of course, as I say, it's a good idea, we think, to start locally. And the next place to look, just going to diverge from BSBI website for a moment, is to look at your local flora. And many of these are written by VCR, some of them, unfortunately, as Jonathan was saying at the outset of this meeting, unfortunately no longer with us. But inside, and not only is there information about plants and ecology and so forth, but you will find the identities of lots of local botanists, past and present, who've contributed to these floras. And that provides you with an interesting list of potential contacts to talk to when many of them are experts on particular genera of plants, and to have somebody local who you can turn to, I think, is a really, really big advantage. And of course, back to the BSBI, although we have sometimes provided grants for local floras, what we also do, of course, is publish these fantastic handbooks. And I don't say that just because I'm the author of one of them. They are absolutely brilliant books, really very cheap, for 15, 18 pounds these days, I think. And there's an ever-growing list of them covering groups of plants. And one of the things that we've discovered over the years of talking to botanists, as I say, of all levels, is that one often doesn't know quite where to start with a large group of plants. You know, you find an umbellifer and you think, now, where shall I start? Well, Stace is pretty intimidating, Stace's Flora. A good place to start might be the BSBI handbook on umbellifers. I don't think it's actually up on this page, but there is an excellent one. And these can be very good spots to begin to look at, in slightly more depth, perhaps, at one large group of plants, or even small ones such as fumitories, which are reputed to be difficult. But actually, if you've got this BSBI handbook, I can tell you it really, really simplifies things no end and makes fumitories really quite easy to identify in the field. Although you wouldn't want to carry it around in your backpack, there is also a brilliant book, which I discovered very early on when I first became a member of the BSBI, and that is the plant crib. It's been going for quite a long time. It started off life in 1988, I think, as a local plant crib written by George Graham, who was the Vice County Recorder in my neighbouring county of Durham. And it really just covered the north of England, and it's been expanded and expanded. And it's this is its 1998 edition, which I think is the most recent printed one. But the big plus is that you don't have to carry it around in your backpack, because you can look online, and the whole thing basically is available online. Here's an example of one of the pages. This is bluebells, sort of thing you might want to look at if you suspect that the bluebells in your area are hybrids. And this gives you a very nice table to show you how to tell the hybrids from our native one, and I think it's already is no scripter, and the rather nasty Spanish one that people grow in their gardens. And of course, if you're going out into the field, you can do what I often do, which is I download one of these pages onto my phone or my tablet, and I can take it with me. If I know I'm going to be looking at bluebells today, I can have this on my phone. And the same applies, of course, to all sorts of other plants, all sorts of other genera. Here's a juga. You're not perhaps quite likely to find this hybrid very often, but it just shows you the sort of depth that the plant crib goes into. Now, one of the areas which often causes the most problem to reasonably novice botanists are alien plants. Of course, they're covered in Stacey's Flora, but that can be quite difficult and intimidating for relatively new botanists. What you want is a picture. Where do you find the pictures? Well, here you go, back to the BSBI website, and you will find there is a huge list of illustrations of alien plants. BSBI used to publish them on the front covers of BSBI News, and indeed has published a book with many of them in. There's a huge list. I mean, scores, hundreds of them, and you can click on the hyperlink, and it will take you to a good illustration, a genuine botanical illustration of that particular alien plant. Because finding the good descriptions and photographs and drawings of alien plants is fraught with difficulty. Much of the stuff on the web turns out to be wrongly identified and is of no use to you whatsoever. So this is a fantastic resource compiled by David Pearman and somebody else, I think. And of course, my pet area of herbaria. Now, for me, one of the best ways to learn about botany is to visit your local herbarium and look at the pressed plants. If you get the sheets out, you've got your rose or your stace or your streeter next to you, and you can look at the description. You can see exactly what they mean by these leaves are shortly petiolate. Well, yes, I can see it on this plant. I can read the description and then I can look at the actual plant itself. And the BSBI page has got a link to a list of all the available herbaria in the UK with contacts so that you can book your visit. And I strongly recommend it. Of course, there are our journals, and they are all available via the BSBI website. The most recent edition of BSBI News goes up a little bit, I think, after its actual publication, but there are back numbers of all of these available via the BSBI website, and that in itself is fantastic resource. And of course, again, if it's an interesting article, you can download it to your computer or you can download it to your phone and carry it around with you. And if you can't find what you're looking for, if you're looking for an article which wasn't published in one of our journals, you can go to this site. This is the Biodiversity Heritage Library. It's run, I believe, from Canada, and it is an absolutely enormous resource of books, journals. As you can see there, you can sort by, if you're looking for a particular journal author or by date, by title, and so forth. And they indeed have a full set of Watsonia, for example, on their site. But if you're looking for something just a little bit further away in time, you can go onto this site, and if it's not a sort of Serbo-Croat Journal of Botany or something, if it's not really abstruse, you're likely to be able to find it on the Biodiversity Library website. It is a fantastic resource, and many people don't know about it and don't use it. Another resource which I recommend, I used to verify for them for quite a long time, is iSpot. You have to sign up, get a password and a username, and you can then post photographs on iSpot. Here's some examples from somebody worried about dogs' mercury. You put your photograph up, you say, what's this? I'm not quite sure what this is. And there are quite a number of VCRs are actually on this. And you get very quickly, usually, quite a good identification if you're stuck for one. And this is, again, it's quite a good learning technique. I thoroughly recommend iSpot. It's a very good resource. And if you're rather baffled by keys, particularly long keys for rather difficult plants, you might try NatureGate. Again, it's something you can access on your phone. You don't have to use it on your computer screen. And NatureGate is a sort of multi-access key to the Flora of Great Britain and other places too, but particularly Great Britain. And it's brilliant because the trouble with the key is sometimes you don't have the pieces that they need. It says, you know, how many stamens are there? And you haven't got any stamens because the flowers have fallen off. Well, this allows you to key plants out from numerous different angles. Maybe looking at flowers or maybe looking at the leaves, and you can just put in the answers that you've got, and NatureGate will come up with photographs, properly verified photographs of a number of choices, and it's really quite a good system. And of course, if you want to start putting your records in, send them to your Vice County recorder by all means, or put them onto iRecord. And again, this is quite a clever system because it allows for feedback from verifiers who look at the records you put on. This is the page, as you can see, for Northumberland, with quite a few records on there. I'm a verifier for Northumberland. So if you, as is my colleague James Common, and so if you put a record on for Northumberland, put a picture on with it, and within a few days, back will come an answer saying, yes, that's correct, or well, I'm not sure about that. And I've had very good experiences with iRecord because it allows me to feed back to the recorder. And on occasion, I beat back and said, well, I'm not sure about this. Could you go take some photographs of the leaf tips, please? Within a couple of days, back come a photograph of the leaf tips, and you can say, oh, yes, well, I can tell you now exactly which plant this is. There was a choice of two, and now I know which one it was. So if you're lucky and you live in an area where you've got an enthusiastic set of verifiers, you can put photographs up and get your record verified. And I should also tell you, because I happen to be the referee for Euphrasia, that if you put Euphrasia records up with a photograph, you will get a virtually instantaneous response from me. I try to do them within 2 or 3 days, and if you're lucky, you take a really good photograph, you may actually get it identified species. One final area, if you want to look at the records which people put in, I suggest the NBN. Of course, the DDB, and there's questions about access to the DDB and so forth, but an awful lot of records, surprising records actually, are on the NBN site. And you can go on there, you can search for species or a particular area. And here we are, for example, this is, you might find surprising, these are plants that you might think people want the records suppressed, but if you go on there, you'll find there's lots of records for the Lindisfarne helleborina, endemic to my area, and some of them, as you can see, are 8-figure grid references, which is jolly good, because I'm one of those people that thinks that everybody ought to know where everything is. So there are a huge number of records on the NBN which you can access, and you can dig into them. And here it is. Here's one of them from the Lindisfarne helleborina. You can see there's a lot of information there, who recorded it, where it is, nice grid reference, and so on. So this again is a brilliant resource. And one absolutely final one, this is run by the chair of the Wildflower Society. And I mentioned right at the beginning, one of the problems with botany on the web is that you get lots and lots of pictures, and many of them are misidentified. Well, this is a site where you can guarantee that the pictures of the British flora are correct. And you see there's about 1,500 photographs. Here's the one page of them. This is the A page. And you can, if you want to know what a plant looks like, you can click on Ajuga reptans or Alpamilla, whatever it is, and will come a series of photographs, a little bit of information, and you can guarantee that those photographs are correctly identified. And it's a very useful resource because, as I said, a lot of photographs on the web turn out to be not what they are stated to be. So that's a very quick gallop round some of the available resources. I say in 15 minutes, you can only really scratch the surface, and I've been talking rather quickly too. But you could talk for all afternoon, I should think, about resources for botany. But I hope that some of these, at any rate, you'll find to be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was splendid. I've learnt a few new sites and so on myself. So you've certainly done your job for sort of intermediate level botanists as well as beginner ones. One resource that I sometimes use for some of the more obscure things is the Alien Flora of Belgium, which does quite well and has some of the similar sorts of species to what we do. So that's another thing to look for.
Is that in English?
A lot of it is, yes.
Because I mean, I'm surprised at how many continental botany books turn out, in your floras particularly, turn out to be in English. And actually they're quite a good resource too, very often.
Yeah, and even if they're not in English, the pictures
Yes,
are often sufficient to be helpful.
there's an excellent one, a German one, Rottmaler, excursion Flora, which is only a pocket-sized book, and it's the only one I know which fits in your pocket, which has got genuine botanical illustrations in, hand-drawn botanical illustrations, the sort you might get in the Stella Ross trade books. And I know quite a few VCRs who carry that around.
Yeah, I've got it and I keep it here, but it's a very much used resource, that's for sure. Yeah. So we've got a couple of questions now. So Sarah Wild says, would you recommend So You Want to Know Your Plants as a guide for beginners?
Sorry, say that again. I'm just looking.
So You Want to Know Your Plants, which I think is a little booklet.
Yes, I think that's very good. I mean, there are. I'm just looking at the questions. I think there are a number of that sort of resource, and there's also somebody's mentioned recording apps, and let's deal with both of those together. Not recording apps, identification apps. I think they are getting better and better. I think all the resources that are available just increase in availability and their efficiency. And so you want to know your plants is a good example of that. I mean, it's relatively recent. And the recording app, the identification apps, I have been faintly involved in playing with one or two. And of course, they get better because the more people use them and the more photographs are taken with the apps, they're a self-learning process, and the app actually learns as it goes along. And I was out with somebody trying to get it to identify euphrasia, not very successfully. Perhaps it was because I couldn't identify the phrases very successfully either. But so I think they're good, and they're getting better and better. Somebody else has mentioned Keble Martin. Yes, well, everybody has their favourite picture book, I suppose. I was brought up on Keble Martin. Yes, the pictures are very good, but the problem is that the taxonomy is way out of date, and you have to do quite a bit of research, as it were, digging around to link the picture to the actual modern name of the plant. I mean, some of them, of course, haven't changed at all, but quite a few of them have. I think it's invidious, really, to say to people, well, you should use this book or that book or the other book. Everybody has their favourite. I'm not a fan of Gerarda Streeter. I'm a fan of Rose. That's if I use a picture book, usually that's it. But that's just my preference. Other people have completely different views. So yes, there are a lot of good picture books available. And somebody else has mentioned the FSC fold-out guides. I mean, they are fantastic. When we run a ferns course, or ran a ferns course for Manchester Met for many years, and one of the resources we recommended was the fold-out fern guide. They're really excellent. There are some gaps. Nobody's written one for sedges yet, I don't think. Somebody needs to do that. That would be quite handy. It was a very good one on common grasses. So excellent one on ferns. So yes, they're a very good resource too.
Yeah, they're one that I started off with. And I think to an extent that the more picture books you have, the more you could compare and contrast. Because almost inevitably each one will emphasize some different characteristic of the plant.
Yes.
I think that's, and Sarah's mentioned the aid gap guides as well. So
yes,
a sort of step up from the fold out sheets that FSC produce. Okay, I think that's all the questions for you, Chris. Thank you ever so much. Clearly, you've given us quite a lot of good ideas, and hopefully, as a result, we'll get more correctly identified plants coming in that don't need this mentoring process so heavily. But in part, that's what VCRs are there to help with. So if you do have difficulties with identification, do contact your local VCR. They'll be delighted to help you. And who knows, you might be the next VCR.